I'm gonna talk to you about a very, very interesting project that I've been working on with Linda. This is Linda's baby, Linda Ball. And I'm an orthopedic surgeon, I'm a knee surgeon, and do a lot of education and medical education, and I've always been interested in innovation. And Linda really captured my imagination when we met during the pandemic through a friend, and she came from the construction industry and then into textiles, and she found out about this incredible initiative that was going on in Spain and other parts of Europe with a company called Sequel. And Sequel were doing something really interesting. So they were capturing plastic from the sea and from landfill, and they were turning that into textiles and things that people could wear and things that people could use. And they were doing that in a completely carbon neutral way by using solar energy and by using some very clever processes that I'm going to go into in some more detail. And I think Linda met somebody that was wearing a hat that had been made from this Sequel textile, and the gentleman that was wearing it told her she got very caught up in the process and has set up this business that has now got contracts with the NHS and the private sector. And it's something that we as surgeons are, I think everybody in the room and everybody on the planet is, with any kind of moral compass, is very worried about what's going on at the moment with climate change. And we're all very aware of the fact that things are not going in the right direction for us, and more importantly for our children and people to come after us. So I'm going to go through the process in some detail, but it's a proprietary process that Sequel have developed, and Linda has access, a very unique access to their technology and their yarn, which is comes part from landfill. But the fishermen go out, and once they've caught their fish, they throw out their nets on the way back, and they're actually incentivized to catch plastic. So they bring in tons of plastic, which is then sorted, and the useful plastics are then used, polyethylene's used, to go through this process and create this yarn. And it's then shipped to the UK, and Linda then uses it to make things that we wear actually already at the hospitals where I work. So all those plastic bottles that we see on the beach, and it's very depressing now whenever we go on holiday. I was recently in Malta, and I jumped in. Malta's very famous for scuba diving, and everywhere I looked I could see plastic. I had to go and do some work in the Cayman Islands, which is obviously a very bad place to have to go and work, and yet again we could see rubbish washing up onto the beach, and in the Cayman Islands they had sorting parties that would go out and collect. So everyone's thinking about this. So the plastic is collected, and then it's chipped into flakes, and the flakes are then put into a process that allows them to make yarn, which then goes on to make this fabric. So Linda's very excited about that, but what she really wants to do is she wants to bring that technology into the UK and make it local, so we don't have to pay for the transportation, and we can create a new industry, really focusing on the NHS, which is a huge burden in terms of its carbon footprint. Just one total knee replacement, I mean, I do a lot of those, and one total knee replacement generates the same amount of carbon waste as a business class flight to New York. So that's 1 million knee replacements every year going on, same for hip, perhaps slightly more. And obviously every single operation that we do, we generate bags and bags of waste, and at the moment they're just going out the door and being dealt with in not a very eco-friendly way. So Linda wants to bring this technology into the UK. She's already identified a site where she wants to create her own factory and work alongside the NHS to create these textiles and make a whole series of different products: tunics, aprons, curtains, syringes, everything that's made from plastic, from polyethylene. And that in itself could create a very exciting new industry that will support that in terms of delivering that, and also picking up the waste, disposing of the waste, and again bringing that back in and making this circle of production, use and waste. So in terms of the process, I've mentioned it already, and these are very high quality garments, and if you take something like a surgical scrub, which is 100% recycled or upcycled. So every surgical scrub that I wear now at the Cromwell, because Linda won a competition, she won the Bupa Global. Bupa's fairly big in the UK, but it's massive in Spain, it's very big in South America, and they had a global competition to look at who could do the most innovative thing to save make some carbon saving. And Linda came first in the UK, and she came second. In fact, she was cheated. She should have been first globally, but we won't talk about that. But the chap that did win, he paid the price for beating Linda. No one gets one over on Linda. And anyway, Linda has now got a relationship with the Bupa Cromwell group. And really, Linda should be giving this presentation, because when she does, everyone starts sort of high-fiving her at the end, and sort of, because she's so passionate about this. And when she gave this presentation to the Bupa nurses and the senior managers 2 years ago, the excitement that generated by the workforce, by the nurses and the doctors, in terms of doing something really simple, well, it really captured their imagination. So now every tunic, front of house garment, the curtains, everything that Bupa have will be coming from Linda's technology. And if you take something like a surgical scrub, well, there are very, very specific savings, which I'll show you on the next slide, in terms of CO2, water and energy. But by bringing this into the UK, we can make even further savings. The factory that she's planning to build is going to be solar driven again. And it's amazing that if you take something that's 100% upcycled, like the scrubs I wear, then 36% less carbon dioxide, 34% less water, and it saves 40% in the energy costs. And we all know the cost of energy has gone through the roof. So in terms of a cycle that she's created, it's to actually join forces with the NHS, which is a dirty organisation when it comes to its carbon footprint. We produce too much waste. Joining with the NHS and the private sector, but really the big ticket here is the NHS. And by recycling, collecting, using, creating this cycle, we can actually day to day have a huge impact on the carbon footprint of our country and show something that we could be very proud of to the rest of the world. So if we look at the actual metrics of this, and we look at gowns or curtains, if we take 1,000 gowns or 1,000 curtains, well, it's all very easy for us. And I really like this. When I first saw this presentation, I really liked the analogy of plastic Evian water bottles that we see bobbing up and down in the ocean. So 1,000 gowns is 22,000 1-litre bottles, and it will then create 130,000 curtains for us. Or we can look at it in terms of waste. If we look at scrubs, and we take the very smart scrubs that we love at the Cromwell because they're very smart. Again, 1,000 scrubs is 30,000 bottles, or 560 kilograms of general polyethylene waste. So this has become a science as we start to come into carbon taxing. So I'm not sure if there are any managers in the room or people working within the NHS, but as of October of this year, the NHS and every company will be expected to pay a carbon tax, and it's all worked out by a governing body. And if you work with Linda, she's seen this coming, and she's been working very hard to create a formula where you can buy her products, and that comes with a carbon saving, a very specific number that you can then plug into your carbon tax and reduce your carbon costs. So here, if we wanted to make 200 scrubs, it's a slightly busy slide. We're looking at saving 30 litres of water. That's the amount of energy that it's going to cost actually to make that. And we end up with 55, Linda, what's that figure again?
Carbon credits.
Carbon credits, sorry, yeah. She did prep me fairly well for this. Every time I got it wrong, she slapped me and said, come on, Adrian, don't make a mistake. So 55 carbon credits. So these are different products that Linda's got, and this has all been worked out in this very scientific way. So for a small number of scrubs, obviously, we see a smaller number of credits. And obviously, this is an enormous organisation, the NHS. So if we just look at the M25 and the number of hospitals, setting up something local which Linda's already done, will allow her to interact with all of these NHS hospitals and deliver products in a carbon-saving way. So at the moment, most of what we use comes from China. And if you look at the amount of energy it costs to make 1 litre of textile from a Chinese source, it's 36 megajoules versus what it costs at the moment if we bring it in from Europe using the sequel fabric. So that's the energy, water and CO2 savings, the 3 main metrics that we look at. So Linda's got these 4 specific yarns that she's created, these 4 products, and again, very scientifically looked at what we can save in terms of the energy, water and CO2 and so on. The other thing that she thought would be very useful and has become a focus and actually one of the USPs for her is to track and trace what's going on. So, you know, where has it come in terms of which landfill site, in which country, which hospital has produced the waste, or which construction company produced the waste, or indeed, where has it come from in terms of coming from the ocean. Tracking that through and looking at the cost of that, and then looking at the cost of actually recycling and upcycling that into a new fabric, and again, tracking and looking at the costs to the planet and the physical costs in terms of energy and water, in terms of manufacturing these garments, and eventually producing it and giving it to the client. And she's been very successful. She has formed very good relationships and has contracts with the Premier League. Linda's been very interested in football. She used to be a professional football player, and that's not true. In fact, the greatest story Linda's got is singing with Shirley Bassey once, and anyway, that's for another time. And so she's working with the Premier League, she's working with the UN, and she's working with F1, which is how she found out about this. Actually was at an F1 meeting. And now she's obviously joined forces with the NHS, and she's done trials at St Thomas's, Milton Keynes, a number of different NHS hospitals, and there's already a lot of interest in terms of the gowns, hats, gloves, curtains, and so on. So what Linda wants to do, and what Upcycled Medical want to do, is to remove the waste and track where the waste goes. She has a proprietary way of actually making the plastic. So Linda's linked with some scientists from the US. They have a special product that they can mix into making these garments that allows the plastics to be melted at a lower temperature, which allows these plastics to actually be recycled 100-fold more than they would be without this. So produce this yarn in a very scientific way with some great USPs, and move this to Thames Gateway, or where the new factory will be, hopefully. And these are the sort of products that she's got, and she made a series of amazing umbrellas for us when we first met. We've all got them still. They're absolutely fantastic, by some really famous umbrella company. And so she's produced clothes for our children. She's produced these umbrellas. She's made hats and gloves, but she's really focused in on the NHS, and she's got a whole series. She has a catalogue of scrubs and dresses and tunics and plastic aprons and hats and so on. And if you're interested, Linda can tell you more about that later in the Q&A. In terms of washing the scrubs, actually there's a very finite number of times that a standard scrub can be washed, and we all feel scruffy quite quickly in the NHS when we're wearing these broken, slightly dishevelled looking scrubs. Linda's very smart outfits can be washed a lot more before they have to be replaced, so obviously there's a huge cost saving there. And then the next series of slides are all the sign-offs in terms of all the certification that Linda's gone into, in terms of making sure that she's working properly with SQL, that she's got all the ISOs, so everything has been ticked off in a way that would be compliant with the NHS. That's actually as much as I wanted to say. I think what we'll do is, because we've got another 10 minutes, is there anything else that you'd like to say, Linda? We have a Q&A at the end. Is there anything that I missed in terms of the message?
Only for the fact that we should be taking the waste from the hospital, using that to make the products, bringing them back forward.
Yeah.
And for traceability, you need to track and trace of the vehicles that are moving it, the ships that they're coming on, the processes that are being made. Are they being used with solar energy? Are they being used with diesel? Are they being used with petrol? Because all of it mounts up and it counts. And the more,
we were talking before, actually didn't know I was giving that presentation, but I have heard it a few times. We were talking before about containers. So these big containers that come from China, they used to be about £2,000 before the pandemic. It's quite expensive. Now they're £18,000 the last time Linda looked. So the cost of actually, taking, and I don't know if I'm going to get thrown in prison for this, but my understanding is that they don't recycle all of the plastic. They might recycle a little bit and throw that in to say, there are these sort of tricks to the process of recycling that we all think, Linda told me something really depressing about the bins that we all go and we're really careful about where we put all our rubbish, and my wife goes absolutely bananas if I don't put the glass in the glass bin. But Linda told me something really depressing about what really happens in terms of how that gets sorted, and I don't think it's done in quite the way that we would like. I told that to my wife and she told me it was nonsense, so carry on sorting your rubbish. So look, I'll stop there I think, and then we'll introduce Martin. Martin's flown over. I'm absolutely mortified because I'm becoming more and more Irish, and ever since Brexit. And in fact my mother told me a story the day my father died. So I went out and checked, a bit of DNA checking, and I'm 53% Irish. My mother's Irish. And I'm not particularly English. It was a strange story she told me, and then I got an Irish passport, and I'm very proud of the fact that we used to go to Waterford 3 times a year to see my grandparents. And I said to Martin, "Where are you from?" And he said, "Well, I'm from County Carlow." I said, "Where's that?" And he said, "Well, it's in Ireland." I said, "Well, obviously you're from Ireland. And whereabouts is it?" "Well, it's about 20 miles away from Waterford." So I'm a bit mortified about my Irish geography. So Martin's going to give us the next talk. He's going to speak to us about technology and how that can be used in the NHS in a holistic way, in a holistic approach. Thanks, Martin.